Long ago, the galaxy had learned one lesson: never go to Earth. It was a silent world, floating in the dark, cold part of space. No messages came from it. No signals. Just silence. The Galactic Council had marked it as forbidden. All maps showed a red circle around Earth with a simple warning: do not enter. But not everyone followed rules. Reichel was a young explorer from the Zarnak species. He was smart, bold, and very curious. He had heard stories about Earth. Some called it a graveyard. Others said monsters once lived there. But Reichel didn't believe in old stories. He believed in science. He believed the past should be studied, not feared. One day, Reichel gathered a small team of explorers. There were 4 of them: Kale, the quiet pilot; Lyra, the tech expert; Varn, the strong guard; and Reichel, the leader. They took a small, fast ship and left their homeworld. They told the council they were going to explore asteroid fields, but they had a different plan. They were going to Earth. As the ship moved closer to the old blue planet, the crew grew quiet. From the window, they saw a world filled with clouds and strange colors. Earth didn't look dead. It looked asleep. The cities were still there: tall towers, broken bridges, and wide empty roads. But there was no light, no sound, no life. "This place gives me chills," Kale whispered. Lyra checked her scanner. No signs of movement. No signals. Everything is off. They landed near what used to be a large human city. The air was cold and dry. Buildings were broken, but still standing. Rust covered everything. Machines were frozen in time. Cars sat in the middle of roads, like the people had just vanished. Where did they all go? Varn asked. No one knows, Reichel said, but we're going to find out. They walked through the city ruins. Strange signs in the human language were still visible. Reichel took pictures. Lyra collected data. Everything seemed peaceful, too peaceful. Then they found the hole. In the middle of the city square, a large metal plate was half buried in the ground. It had strange writing on it. The letters were old, but still clear. Project Silence. Do not open. What is this? Lyra asked, confused. Reichel's eyes lit up. A bunker, he said. Maybe a vault. Do not open. Sounds like a warning, Varn said. Reichel smiled. Or a challenge. Kale didn't like it. We should leave. We came, we saw. Let's go. But Reichel couldn't stop now. He wanted answers. He wanted history. He wanted to be the first alien to uncover Earth's secrets. They opened the hatch. The door was heavy and made a loud screeching sound. A thick mist poured out. Cold air touched their skin. The smell of old metal filled their noses. They walked down metal stairs into darkness. Lights on their suits lit the way. Pipes ran along the walls. Everything was still working after all these years. The deeper they went, the more they saw. Rooms filled with machines, computers, empty chairs, old screens. And then they found the chamber. A round room with a glass pod in the center. Inside the pod was a human. Not dead, not alive, just sleeping. His face was calm, his body strong. His arms crossed over his chest. Wires were connected to his head and chest. His name was written on the side of the pod. Captain Dorn. Emergency protocol. Do NOTWE. Everyone froze. Is he alive? Lyra asked. Reichel scanned the pod. Yes. Somehow. Then let's go, Kale said. Now. But Reichel shook his head. This is the discovery of a lifetime. One human left. We must bring him back. No, Kale said. This is wrong. This place is wrong. We broke the rule. There is no danger, Reichel said. He's just a man. He pressed the button. The pod hissed. The glass opened. Cold mist rose around them. The human didn't move at first. Then his fingers twitched. His chest moved. His eyes opened. The room went silent. Captain Dorn slowly sat up. His eyes were cold, sharp. He looked at each of them. He didn't speak. He just watched, like a hunter watching animals. Then he said something. His voice was low, dry, but strong. "You woke me." Reichel stepped forward. "Yes, we are explorers. We found this place. We mean no harm." Captain Dorn stood. He was taller than they expected. His suit still worked. The lights on it began to glow again. "You don't know what you've done," he said. The lights in the room flickered. The computers turned on. Old systems rebooted. The machines knew their master had returned. "I was put here to sleep, so the galaxy could live," Dorn said. Reichel's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "You think Earth died," Dorn said. "No, we left it sleeping. We left ourselves sleeping, because we were too strong, too dangerous." The walls began to hum. A soft signal was sent into space, a pulse. "What was that?" Lyra asked. Dorn looked at them, his face calm, his eyes sharp. "You broke the silence." Kale backed away. "We have to go. Now." Outside, the sky began to change. Old satellites turned on. Deep under Earth's oceans, machines woke up. In space, ancient human ships turned toward Earth. And in the vault, Captain Dorn said just one more thing. "You will not survive what comes next." Reichel's heart raced as he stared at Captain Dorn. The human was standing there, as still as a stone, his cold eyes scanning them one by one. The tension in the room was thick, and for a moment, none of them moved. The air around them seemed heavier, as if the entire vault had come alive with the human's awakening. "What do you mean by what comes next?" Reichel asked, trying to steady his voice, but his hands were trembling. He couldn't understand what was happening. Captain Dorn was just one man, right? Just a single human. Why did it feel like something much bigger was about to unfold? Dorn didn't answer immediately. He seemed to be listening to something only he could hear. His eyes closed for a moment, then opened, and he looked at them with an unreadable expression. His voice, when it came, was calm, yet it carried the weight of a deep buried power. "You've awakened a sleeping giant," Dorn said. "The galaxy doesn't understand what humanity is capable of. And now you will." Reichel wanted to ask more, but the words wouldn't come. He had never felt fear like this before. This wasn't the usual thrill of discovery. This was something much darker. They had broken the rule. The one rule the Galactic Council had kept for centuries: don't wake the humans. The machines in the vault hummed louder now, their screens flickering on. Lyra stepped back, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What are these?" she whispered, pointing to the now active monitors. Dorn's eyes followed her gaze, and he smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. "These are systems that the galaxy forgot. They're linked to Earth, to the old human empire. And now they're awake." Kale was the first to speak. "We need to get back to the ship. Now." But Reichel couldn't move. He was frozen in place, still staring at the human before him. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "We've woken you up. What happens now?" Dorn looked at him for a long moment, then turned and started walking towards the exit of the vault. "You'll see soon enough. The galaxy is about to change." Reichel quickly glanced at the others. Lyra and Kale were already moving towards the door, but Varn, the guard, remained at the back of the room, eyes narrowed, as if sensing something more in the air. Reichel felt it too. Something was wrong. Something was coming. As they hurried through the dark halls of the vault, Reichel noticed that the lights above flickered strangely. The air was growing colder. The hum of the machines was louder now, almost deafening. They reached the entrance, where the ship was waiting. Reichel felt a sharp, sudden pang of fear. It was as if the planet itself was alive, watching them, waiting for something. "We need to leave. Now." Cale shouted as he ran toward the ship. Reichel didn't need to be told twice. He followed quickly, but as they climbed aboard, he glanced back towards the vault. He could feel something watching them. Something vast. Something ancient. They were just about to seal the hatch when Captain Dorn appeared at the entrance of the vault. He was standing still, as if he had always been there, as if the world itself had shifted around him. "I told you," Dorn said, his voice cutting through the rising wind. "It's too late now. You woke me. You woke all of us." With that, he turned and walked slowly toward the horizon. The ship's engines roared to life, but before they could take off, something strange happened. A low hum, deep and rumbling, began to fill the air. The ground beneath them trembled. It wasn't an earthquake, not like anything they'd felt before. It was something far older, far stronger. "Get us out of here," Lyra screamed, panic rising in her voice. Reichel quickly activated the ship's controls, but as they lifted off the ground, they could see the sky above them changing. A massive shadow began to form in the sky. Something enormous was approaching. "Is that a ship?" Varn asked, his voice filled with disbelief. It wasn't just a ship. It was something much more. It was a fleet. The ships were black, silent, and massive. They looked ancient, as if they had been waiting for centuries, and they were heading straight toward Earth. "They're coming," Dorn's voice echoed in Reichel's mind, though he was far away by now. "The others are awake. The humans are awake. And now, the galaxy will remember why they feared us." The ship shook violently as Reichel steered it away from Earth. He could see the sky rippling, like it was being torn apart. The dark shadow of the human fleet grew larger, and then, the stars above Earth began to vanish. They weren't disappearing. They were being blocked out by something massive, something that had been hidden for far too long. Reichel's heart pounded in his chest. The full weight of what they had just unleashed was settling in. The galaxy, once so safe and peaceful, was about to face something it had forgotten. A force so powerful, so terrifying, that it could not be stopped. "We've made a terrible mistake," Lyra whispered. Reichel's mind raced. What had they done? What had they woken? Captain Dorn had warned them, but they hadn't listened. Now, it was too late. He didn't know how, but he knew one thing for sure. The humans were back. And this time, they weren't going to let anyone forget their empire. The ship raced through the stars, the cold metal walls humming with the power of its engines. Reichel's fingers gripped the controls tightly, his mind still processing what had just happened. Earth was now behind them, but the galaxy was no longer the same. They had woken something that should have stayed asleep. Reichel's thoughts were interrupted by a beeping sound from the ship's communication system. Lyra quickly turned to the control panel. Her face went pale as she saw the message on the screen. "Reichel, it's a broadcast from Earth," she said, her voice shaking. Reichel turned to her. "What's it saying?" Lyra read the message aloud, her eyes wide. "To all ships in the galaxy, this is Captain Dorn of the Earth Empire. The humans are awake. We are coming for what is ours. You cannot stop us. Prepare for the return of the true rulers of this galaxy." The message ended, and the ship fell into silence. They're coming," Cale said, his voice full of disbelief. "They're actually coming." Reichel couldn't speak. He felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. He had always heard stories of the humans, how they once ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. But those were just stories. Myths whispered in dark corners of the galaxy. He never believed them. Now he wished he hadn't. "Do you think Dorn was speaking for just himself?" Lyra asked, looking at the others. "Or is he part of something bigger?" Reichel shook his head. "He's just the beginning. That broadcast, it sounded like a declaration. He's leading them. And the others are following." "But why now?" Varn asked. "Why wake up after all this time?" "I don't know," Reichel answered, "but it's clear they haven't forgotten who they are. They were hiding, waiting. And now they're coming back. Kale, who had been silent for a long time, spoke up. I don't know what we're going to do. We're just one small ship. We can't stop them. Reichel didn't respond right away. He knew Kel was right. No one knew what to do. The humans were too powerful. Their ships were huge, ancient, and armed with weapons that could destroy entire planets. They had ruled the galaxy once, and now they were returning to take back what was theirs. As the ship flew further into space, Reichel saw something else on the display screen. The stars were disappearing. It wasn't just a glitch. Something huge was blocking out the light. What is that? Lyra asked, staring at the screen. Reichel's heart sank as he saw it. A fleet. A massive fleet, dark and silent, floating in the distance. They were unlike any ships he had ever seen. They looked old, yet powerful. The technology was advanced beyond anything in the galaxy, and there were hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They've already begun, Reichel whispered. They're here. The fleet moved slowly but with purpose, and it was heading straight toward the core of the galaxy, towards the most important planets, towards the places that had long been under the control of other species. The humans were taking back what they had lost. Are we going to stop them? Kale asked, fear creeping into his voice. Reichel didn't answer. How could they stop them? The humans had weapons that could wipe out entire fleets. They had armies that had been waiting, sleeping, for centuries. They were like shadows, forgotten by time, but now returning stronger than ever. Reichel turned to Lyra. Can you get a signal to the Galactic Council? Warn them about what's coming. Lyra quickly worked at the controls, but the screen flashed red. I can't. The signal is being blocked. Whatever technology they're using. It's stronger than anything we have. Reichel cursed under his breath. We need to find out more. We need to understand how they're coming back. I've got an idea, Varn said suddenly, looking over his shoulder. There's an old database in the archives of Zarnax. It might have information about Earth, about the humans. Can you access it? Reichel asked. Varn nodded. I think so. But it's risky. The archives are old, and the system is broken. It might take a while. Do it, Reichel ordered. We don't have much time. As Varn worked, Reichel looked out at the vast emptiness of space. The human fleet was moving, getting closer. It was like a storm, slowly sweeping across the galaxy. He could feel the weight of the galaxy's fear pressing down on him. This wasn't just the return of one species. It was the return of an empire that had ruled with an iron fist, a force so powerful that no one could fight back. Reichel's mind raced. How had the humans kept their power hidden for so long? How had they stayed asleep, waiting for the right moment to strike? He couldn't stop thinking about Captain Dorn, about the cold, calculating look in his eyes, about the way he had spoken with such authority. Dorn wasn't just any human. He was a leader, and the others would follow him. The silence in the ship was broken by a loud beep. Varn had made contact with the archives. The screen flickered, and old images began to appear, images of humans. But these weren't like the ones in the stories. These were images of their true power. They were more than just warriors, Varn said, his voice low. They were rulers, builders, engineers. The humans once controlled entire star systems, but something happened. Something destroyed them. Reichel leaned forward. What happened? Varn's eyes narrowed. They were betrayed. The other species in the galaxy couldn't handle their power. They feared the humans, so they made them sleep. They forced them into hiding. And now, they're waking up. Reichel sat back, his mind spinning. The galaxy had feared the humans so much that they had forced them into hiding. And now, they were returning with a vengeance. We've made a terrible mistake, Reichel muttered. Yes, Varn agreed. But now we have to figure out how to stop them. Reichel turned to look at the human fleet on the display. They were getting closer, the darkness of their ships spreading across the stars. We don't have much time. We need a plan. But deep down, Reichel knew one thing. The humans were coming. And this time, no one would be able to stop them. The ship raced through the cold emptiness of space, its engines roaring as it cut through the darkness. Reichel couldn't shake the feeling that something was closing in on them. Something far more powerful than anything they had ever faced before. The human fleet was coming, and the galaxy was helpless to stop it. "They're getting closer," Cale said, his voice tight with fear. He was staring at the display screen, watching as the dark ships loomed larger. The massive fleet was moving fast, and there was nothing they could do to outrun it. "We need to warn the Council. We need to prepare." Lyra sat at the communications panel, her hands shaking as she tried again to get a signal. But once again, the same message flashed on the screen. Signal blocked. She slammed her fist against the console in frustration. "We can't reach them," Lyra said, her voice rising. "Whatever technology they have is blocking us from contacting anyone. We're on our own." Reichel stared at the screen. The dark ships were closer now. They were massive, dwarfing anything they had seen before. The human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. Ancient and powerful, yet with a chilling precision. And they were heading straight for the heart of the galaxy. "We need to get to the core," Reichel said, his voice low but determined. "If the humans want to take over, we need to stop them there. If we can get to the Galactic Council, maybe we can rally enough forces to fight back." "But how?" Varn asked, looking at the growing fleet on the screen. "We don't even have enough firepower to defend ourselves, let alone go up against them." Reichel turned to Varn. "We don't have a choice. We have to try. If we don't stop them now, it will be too late." They knew it was a risk. A dangerous one, but staying silent and doing nothing wasn't an option anymore. They had already awakened the humans, and now the galaxy had to face the consequences. Reichel set a course for the core of the galaxy, where the Council's main station was located. The ship's engines roared as it pushed through the void, but Reichel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being washed. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, without warning, the ship jolted. Alarms blared as the lights flickered. "What was that?" Cale shouted, looking around in panic. Lyra quickly checked the systems. "We've been hit. Something just scanned us. We're being tracked." Before anyone could respond, a loud, deep sound echoed through the ship. The hull groaned as something powerful struck them again. "They're firing at us," Varn yelled. Reichel slammed his fist against the control panel. They were under attack. The humans had found them. "Get us out of here," Cale shouted. "We need to avoid them." Reichel pulled the ship into a sharp turn, hoping to outrun the attackers. But it was too late. Another hit shook the ship violently. Sparks flew from the walls, and the lights flickered out completely. "We're losing power," Lyra cried. "If they hit us again, we won't be able to escape." Reichel gritted his teeth, desperation creeping into his mind. They had no way of winning this fight. The human fleet was too strong. They were surrounded by darkness, by the cold void of space, and by an enemy that knew them all too well. Then, just as all hope seemed lost, a strange signal came through the ship's communication system. It was faint, barely audible, but it was a message. "It's from Earth," Lyra said, quickly adjusting the frequencies to amplify the signal. The voice that came through was calm, controlled, but it was filled with an unsettling coldness. "This is Captain Dorn," the voice said. "You're wasting your time. There's no escape. The humans have returned, and your resistance is meaningless. The galaxy will bend to our will, or it will be erased." Reichel's blood ran cold. Dorn wasn't just speaking for himself. He was speaking for all the humans, for the entire fleet. They weren't coming just to take Earth back. They were coming to take the entire galaxy. "Don't listen to him," Varn muttered, his fists clenched. "We can still fight. We can still." But before he could finish, the ship was struck again. This time, the hit was so powerful that the ship spun out of control. The walls groaned as the hull began to bend under the force. "We're going down," Lara screamed. Reichel tried to regain control, but it was useless. The ship was caught in the powerful pull of the human fleet. They were trapped. There was nowhere to run. In the chaos, Reichel grabbed the controls one last time, knowing that this was the end. He looked out at the dark fleet, their ships moving toward them like shadows, closing in on them from all sides. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized the truth. There was no escape. "Captain Dorn was right," Reichel whispered, his voice filled with dread. "It's too late." The ship's systems began to fail completely. The hum of the engines died away, and the stars outside the window faded into darkness. The ship was helpless. The humans had won. But just as everything seemed lost, a final signal came through. It was from an unexpected source. "This is Zarnak's command," a voice said. It was faint, crackling with static, but it was a voice of hope. "We've detected your distress signal. We're coming to your location. Hold on. We're not giving up." Reichel's eyes widened. The Zarnak's fleet was coming. They weren't alone. There were still allies out there. It wasn't over yet. But even as the hope began to rise in his chest, he knew that the battle was far from over. The humans had returned, and their empire was vast. It wasn't just about winning this fight. It was about surviving the war to come. Reichel didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. The galaxy had changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Reichel sat in the pilot's seat, his hands gripped tightly on the controls. The ship was barely holding together, but there was a faint glimmer of hope now. The Zarnak's fleet had received their distress signal, and they were on their way. But the humans were closer, their dark ships looming over them like an unstoppable storm. "We don't have much time," Cale said, his voice urgent as he peered out the small window of the ship. "The humans are almost on us. They'll finish us off before the Zarnak's fleet can get here." Reichel didn't answer. He knew what Cale was saying was true. The humans were too powerful, too fast. Even with help from the Zarnaks, they were outmatched. But Reichel wasn't ready to give up yet. There had to be something they could do. They couldn't just let the humans take over without a fight. "Can you raise the Zarnak's fleet?" Lyra asked, her eyes fixed on the damaged systems. "I'm trying," she said, adjusting the ship's communications. But again, the message was faint and broken. "I'm not sure they can hear us through this interference. We might have to fight alone." Just then, the ship lurched again as another blast hit them. This time, the hull cracked, and sparks flew from the control panels. Reichel's heart raced. They were running out of time, running out of options. "We can't wait any longer," Reichel said. His voice was steady, but his heart was pounding in his chest. "We need to make a stand." Varn, who had been silent for most of the journey, looked up with a grim expression. "A stand? Against an entire fleet? That's suicide." Reichel turned to Varn, his face hard. "I don't care. We've come this far, and we're not going to just surrender. We owe it to the galaxy to fight." Cale stood up, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "We're with you. Whatever happens next, we do this together." Reichel nodded, feeling the weight of his crew's trust. They were all in this together. They had come so far, and they weren't going to back down now. The humans might be powerful, but they weren't invincible. And if they were going to go down, they would go down fighting. The ship rocked again as another blast struck them. But this time, Reichel didn't flinch. He pulled the ship into a sharp turn, flying towards the heart of the human fleet. He was taking them into the fire, but he had no choice. If they didn't act now, there would be nothing left to save. "We're going in," Reichel said, his voice firm. "Brace yourselves." The crew quickly strapped in, and Reichel felt his heart race as they flew straight into the midst of the human fleet. The ships were massive, their dark forms like shadows against the stars. There was no way they would survive this head-on assault, But Reichel wasn't planning on playing fair. He had one chance. One chance to make this count. The ship's weapon systems flared to life as they neared the first of the human ships. Reichel fired, and the ship rocked with the force of the blast. But the human ships didn't flinch. They were made for this kind of battle, and the Zarnak's fleet was still too far away to help. Reichel, we can't take much more of this. Lara shouted as the ship shuddered under another attack. But Reichel didn't stop. He pushed the engines harder, flying through the chaos, targeting the weak spots in the human ships. They had to break through, even if it meant risking everything. He fired again, and this time there was a spark of success. One of the massive human ships buckled, sending debris into space. "Direct hit," Kale shouted, his voice filled with a rare sense of excitement. It worked, but their victory was short-lived. The human fleet retaliated, and this time they were ready. A massive blast hit the ship, sending it into a spin. Reichel gritted his teeth, struggling to regain control, but it was clear this was the beginning of the end. "Hold on," Reichel shouted as he fought to steady the ship, but the ship's systems were failing, and the Zarnak's fleet was still too far away to help. They were trapped in the heart of the human fleet with no way out. Then, just as all seemed lost, a new signal came through. "This is the Zarnak's fleet," a voice crackled through the comms. "We're here. We're ready to assist." Reichel's heart leaped with relief. They had made it just in time. The Zarnak's fleet emerged from the shadows, their ships firing on the human fleet with deadly precision. The battle had shifted, but the humans weren't giving up easily. "Prepare for a full-scale attack," Reichel ordered. "We fight together, or we die together." The Zarnak's ships formed around Reichel's, creating a shield between the crew and the human ships. For the first time, the humans were being pushed back. Reichel could see the look of surprise on the human fleet's face. They hadn't expected resistance. But it wasn't enough. The human fleet was still massive, and the Zarnak's ships were outnumbered. The fight raged on, with blasts echoing across the void. But Reichel held on, knowing that every second mattered. They couldn't let the humans win. Not this time. Not after everything they had already sacrificed. Minutes turned into hours. The battle dragged on, and Reichel knew they couldn't keep this up forever. But the Zarnak's fleet wasn't backing down, and neither was he. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the human fleet began to retreat. Slowly, they pulled back, one by one. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. The humans had learned that they weren't the only ones who could fight. The Zarnak's fleet had given them the chance they needed. They had stood their ground. As the ship limped away from the battle, Reichel breathed a sigh of relief. The humans were gone. For now. But the war was far from over. They had only just begun to uncover the full power of the human empire, and who knew what would happen next. One thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again.